Hi ladies, I hope this video finds you well. This is my mental health hack day 4, and today I'm going to be talking about grief. Grief is something that I know very well. I'm sure a lot of you also know it very well. Today just happens to be my brother's birthday. He would have been 46 today, and he died when he was 18. So that's 28 years of not seeing him on his birthday. And I'm sure those of you who have experienced loss of any kind can kind of have an understanding of what that must be like. So for me, in terms of grief, I know we'll all have our own unique experience of that. But if you don't know, I lost my brother when I was 21. I lost a baby when I was 25. And various grandparents and things like that. And then my dad when I was 44, so in 2016. What I wanted to say here is that grief actually is quite a huge topic. Thanks, Jackie. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I would say, in my experience, that grief doesn't just mean death. I know that when my father had the accident with my brother, he was severely disabled from the accident which killed my brother. From the age of he was 48 until he died, for those years, I was thinking that he was going to die all the time. So I had that what's called anticipatory grief. And that went on for years. So if you've got a parent who's poorly or who has dementia, or you might have seen that with your grandparents, that's also something. If you have a divorce, you can have a grief from that. If you've lost a child, obviously. If you've lost a stepchild through a divorce. If you've not had a great relationship with parents, or loss of a job. I think at the moment with COVID, the way that it is, grief is showing up, or those emotions of grief are showing up because of the loss of the life that we knew. And I think some people are really struggling with that at the moment, which is why I wanted to talk about grief today. And it just fell quite nicely for me, because it is my brother's birthday, and it means that the advice that I give you, you can guarantee that I'll be doing this for myself today. So normally today I take the day off, and I've done that for years. Since 1993 I have done that. Today is no different, although I am going to do this video because I want to also show you that despite traumatic loss and grief and trauma, I'm okay. That's what I want you to know. Because if you're not feeling okay, if you're feeling stuck, if you're struggling, I want you to know there's hope. That's what I want to show you. Even if you just take a glimmer of light from what I'm about to say to you in terms of taking care of yourself. So grief really does impact us physically as well as emotionally. So if you've got experience of that, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. From my own experience of grief, when it first happened, well, in fact, with my brother and my father both times, I lost a huge amount of weight. I wasn't hungry. I didn't want to eat. What I did do was drink alcohol, so that went up, and I smoked a lot of cigarettes. I'm not saying do that, I'm saying this is what I did. So I lost a lot of weight, I lost my appetite, I ached in my body. I had a physical, visceral ache in my stomach. It was like someone had stabbed me in the stomach. So, you know, people might say that they've got like a dull ache, a headache, a heartache, a dry mouth, just a general kind of malaise, lethargy. Tiredness, of course, can increase. Sleep issues are often created. So people will find that they wake up, say 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and not be able to get back to sleep. That's very, very common. People experience dreams, nightmares, they'll remember their dreams. There might be quite a lot of trauma involved in the dreams, and obviously all of those things that are happening can then have an inflammatory effect on the body. Now, everything that I've spoken about Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and today, it's all linked. You know, like a lot of this is stress on the body. So everything that I said Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday still applies today. Although I wouldn't recommend taking a cold shower in grief, because we're already traumatized enough. And so save the cold shower for when you're feeling better. But in terms of kind of inflammation, stress on the body causes inflammation. So what we find is that people either undereat or overeat. They go to their habits of behaviour. So they might smoke cigarettes, they might smoke weed, they might drink alcohol, they might have sex, a lot of sex or risky sex. They might spend huge amounts of money on stuff and kind of lose their sense of gentleness with themselves. There's a lot of kind of harsh words, reliving, recreating moments, saying what ifs, all of that stuff. Gemma's just said, good morning Gemma. Initially I felt like my heart was actually broken in two and pain was pouring out. That's exactly what I described myself, Gemma, was this visceral pain. It felt like I had been stabbed in my stomach, in my gut, and that was when I went through this at the age of 21. There wasn't the internet, there wasn't support groups, there wasn't anyone that I could talk to. And when I tried to explain to my friends that I could feel this physical pain, no one really understood what I was talking about. But of course now we've got a lot more information, and there's support groups, and there's people like me talking about grief out there. So whatever you're going through, just know that that's unique to you and for you. There's no one right way of getting through grief, no matter how you're experiencing grief, whatever's showing up for you in your life. There is no one size fits all. We're all completely and utterly unique in our physical makeup, in our emotional makeup, in our mental health makeup. We are unique. So what I'm going to give you a list of things that I found helpful, but please add anything that you feel has helped you, because it might help someone else. You never know. The other thing to just mention here is that grief is, in Chinese medicine, is associated with the lungs. So all of the stuff that I've talked about over the last few days about deep breathing is going to be really, really important in grief. When we're stressed, we tend to, take our breathing up to the chest, and it's short, shallow breaths when we're stressed, and that's gonna create more stress on the system. So if you can, and I know this may be very difficult if you're experiencing grief, I really get this, because both times I've experienced that chronic grief, my priority was not taking care of myself. I didn't really have any priority. But it wasn't taking care of myself. No matter how many people said to me, you've got to eat, you've got to drink water, and all the things that I'm about to say to you, I did the best that I could see to do. And that's what I want to say to you. Like, my biggest advice is whatever you need to do to get through the day or the night, just do what makes sense to you and have no judgment on it. You will be exhausted. You will be raw. You will be emotional. You will feel pain. If I can say anything to you, it's get support. Find someone you trust. Find a group that you can speak to. Talk to someone. Talk to me. Talk to any of the women in the group. It is the biggest and most helpful thing I've done, because I had a safe space to go to where I could be a snotty, crying mess, basically. And I was accepted. And that's a big part of this. It's expressing yourself. I didn't do this when my brother died and my dad had the accident. I just didn't. There was nowhere for me to go with it. So it saved up and saved up and saved up, and pretty much all came out when my father died. But by then, in 2016, you've got quite a lot of support groups and people talking about it. And I felt more able to just let it go. And it's got to move through us. Everything's moving, everything's fluid. Okay, so even our thoughts, everything's moving. The only thing that stays the same is you and your essence. So grief has to move through us, and that's why people would describe it as like a wave. It's like a wave that will build up and then kind of just get a bit kind of easier. I would say to you, as someone who's lived with grief from the age of 21, it doesn't go. It doesn't go anywhere. Most days these days, I can kind of get on with my day and I'm fine, of course. But there's always that little piece of me, that little piece of my heart that knows that someone's missing. And that's what you have. Like, you can get on with your life, of course. You can allow all this stuff to move through you. But it just feels like there's a piece of my soul that's missing. But I also know that I'm being protected and guided and looked after, but that's just my own personal opinion. You'll have your own one. Hello, Marg. Nice to see you here. And Gemma says brain fog has been a big factor, especially when it comes to thinking what to do for dinner. That's I completely agree with you. I had no idea how tiring grief was, and it's only through my experience that I can say to people, you will be exhausted. When my dad died the first year, I ended up in hospital myself, but that's a whole other story. But the second year, I was really exhausted. So yes, and I would say to you, I'm 4 years on now, Gemma, from my dad, and I'm only now beginning to feel less exhausted. So yes, that longing for them, missing them, but feeling it all. So going back, find someone to talk to. Find someone to talk to that you trust. Find a group, like my circle group, where women come in and they can talk to each other, and all the stuff that I've talked about, the breathing, the yin yoga, everything that what we want to do is activate that parasympathetic nervous system. So the magnesium, the water, the yoga, the yin yoga, the breathing, abdominal breathing. Some of you may use crystals and stuff like that. I would sit, like today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get something that means something to me, and I'm going to sit there and just reflect. That's what I do. I'm going to light some candles. I'm going to go for a walk on the beach in a minute. I'm just going to be. And I'll probably talk to my sister and stuff like that. But each year has been different. Each anniversary, each birthday, each part of the grief journey for me has been unique and different. And the other biggest thing, apart from getting support and someone you can talk to, is be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you can't sleep, don't worry. If you cry, don't worry. If you feel angry, don't berate yourself. If you have a rage, don't berate yourself. All of these feelings are normal and natural and okay. And when we get scared of them, we push them aside. I pushed them away for far too long. So yeah, just breathing. Use essential oils. If you haven't used essential oils before, I've got another group where I talk about essential oils. I use them a lot for my grief. And just everyday kind of stress, anxiety, sleep, as I've mentioned. Spend time outside as much as you can. If you're exhausted, especially like at the moment, if you lose, like we're going into the winter, so those of you that are experiencing grief at the moment, in whatever form. Try and get outside as much as you can, because the same thing will start to happen. You know, we'll come in, we don't move, we're quite sedentary, that cortisol builds up. That's why a lot of people lose weight in grief or stress, because that cortisol is kind of eating away at the body, and we want to just balance everything out. The body just naturally wants to balance. It wants to bring itself back to balance. But with our thoughts, often we can take it the other way. And what we want to do is try and redress that. But you have to be open to taking care of yourself and allowing. One of my points here is allowing, just allowing it all. Yeah, and the other thing is, like, anniversaries, birthdays, or whatever. Like, if you know, if it's a divorce or things like that, that you just honour those. Do something that makes you feel good. If you want to work, fine, work. I'm probably going to go and get some fish and chips later. It doesn't matter, like, what you do. Like I said, I'll light a candle. I will remember. But I also know that I don't want to kind of dwell too much on what I've lost, because I can go down a fairly negative cycle. And I've learned over the years that what's better for me is for me to take care of myself and feel grateful for what I've got, rather than focusing on the loss. Now, if you do focus in on the loss or what you've lost, as I've said, be gentle with yourself. Don't judge yourself. Everything is okay. I'm just saying what I've learned works for me now. But of course, I've had this experience from the age of 21. I'm 48 now, so that's 20 billion years. Feels like, anyway. A lot of years. So yeah, let me see. Aromatherapy, yes. Acupuncture, another good one. I had acupuncture because the Chinese believe that, as I've said, grief is associated with lungs. So that breathing, connection, sadness, acupuncture worked brilliantly for me. So that's something else. Thank you, Anna. Aromatherapy. The circle group has been so good for me, says Gemma, especially in these times. You're welcome, Gemma. You're absolutely welcome. And Marg, brilliant. So I hope that was helpful. As I've said, if you've got any other things that have helped you through grief, please share them on this thread, because it'll be very, very useful, I think, for everybody to share what they found helpful. I know that, you know, I've done all of it. I've drunk, I've taken drugs, I've smoked weed, I've eaten, I've not eaten, I've exercised for 4 hours a day, I've lounged about and doing nothing. I have done all of it, and I'm still here to tell the tale. And I do not judge myself for any of it. And I really hope that you don't either. So thank you so much for watching. And yet, I absolutely agree, Anna. Being kind to yourself, wherever you are, whatever's going on for you, however you feel, is going to be huge. In fact, that's my number, that's on my notes, like, number 5, be gentle. I'll talk to you very soon. Lots of love.